Hey Pathlings, it is Monday, so it is I, Spinpixy, and this week we are talking about Imbolc. So, as we've done for all the other Sabbats, we are going to break it down into its many facets. I am going to be talking about the history and lore of Imbolc. So, to start off, I will start with the many names that you can call this Sabbat. It is called Imbolc, which is the old Celtic name for it. It is also pronounced Imolc. It is called Imbolg, Imblog, or Candlemas. It is celebrated on February 2nd, and it is also known as Brigid's Day, Brigid's Day, Breed's Day, Bride's Day. Again, she is a goddess of many pronunciations. Now, what this day marks is the goddess energy. It's a triple goddess energy of the triple goddess going from the crone aspect, again back to the maiden aspect. This is the time where it marks the transition of the dead of winter into the newness of the coming spring. Now, this does not necessarily say that spring is here yet. I like to think of it as how back in the ancient times, winter was a very, very harsh time in the year. Winter was a time where not everything that went into the winter would come out of the winter. What I mean by that is if you had livestock, you could lose livestock, you could lose family members, children, to illnesses of the winter. They didn't have COVID conditions like we do now. They couldn't get to their doctor's office like we can now. They were snowed in many times, for many days sometimes. So if you could survive the winter, it was definitely something to celebrate when you first started to feel those signs of the winter letting up. So the way that they celebrated was with huge fires. Big torch fires, bonfires, and celebrations. Now, Brigid, the goddess that they're celebrating in the Celtic tradition, was the goddess of, triple goddess, first of all, also known as Brigid, Bride, or Brianna, or Brigid, Breed, Brianna. She is goddess of poetry, healing, midwifery, smithcraft, home and hearth. She is the Celtic fire goddess, if you like, and so they marked this time with by lighting her sacred fires and tending to the sacred flames of Brigid. Now, some of the things they would do at this time for their altars would be, wildflowers, corn dollies, any sort of sprouts of new life, greenery on the trees, and, decorating the altar with the newness of the time. But for, our purposes, I would just say, if it does something to mark the beginning of the coming spring, then I would say use it, no matter what it is. If it's, a lemon that reminds you that the sun is going to get hotter and more powerful, then use a lemon. If it's flowers, whatever it is that helps you get to that place of, of welcoming the spring, then definitely put that on your altar. To her, they would offer anything that had to do with Brigid. They would offer her poetry or breads, cakes, anything dairy. Spicy foods and dairy foods were perfect for this time as well, because the dairy is new life, and then the spicy is like the heat of the sun. There's just a lot of things that you can do at this time. This is the time where the energies are beginning to shift. This is no longer just the dark time where the earth is asleep and dead with winter. This is the stirring of the earth, the stirring of the new life that is hidden under the darkness. This is the the changing of the energy from the old into the new, from the dead into the rebirth, the rejuvenation. This is kind of like the passing of the torch of the seasons. So we're still in transition. You're still going to have that gloom, but there's also the promise of the newness that is to come. One of the other things that is done at this time is it is the beginning of the agricultural new year. So they would begin to start thinking about planting and planning out their new gardens and how they were going to do the crops for the coming year. And here on the West Coast, we do pretty much that as well. We get ready to start thinking about the garden, thinking about the things that we're going to want to bring into fruition with this coming planting year, plotting out maybe on paper or maybe even earmarking pieces of land for the growth of crops versus the growth of herbs or trees or what have you. So it's anything that has to do with the growing of new life. The other thing done at this time is initiations or blessings of things that are new. So a new book of shadows, you might want to bless it at this time. A new besom, you might want to bless it at this time. And you might also want to initiate into your path or into the craft at this time. Now there's a difference. You can do an initiation into the craft and then do another one on the path that you choose to follow, because some people will enter the craft and they don't have a deity that they are working with, so they will initiate into the craft saying, to the universe, to the world, I'm a witch, this is my chosen path, this is what I choose, how I choose to live my life, and if there are any deities who would like to work with me, please come forward. So that would be one initiation, but another initiation would be, this is my path, this is my particular goddess, especially if you're on the Celtic tradition and working with Bridget. This would be the time that you would initiate. I initiated around this time many years ago. It was quite some years after I had been studying and learning about witchcraft and about different religions in witchcraft. So me and a couple of my friends together, we initiated into the craft formally. We formally initiated into the craft. And we all had different separate paths that we were following, but we all decided to choose that time together to say we're witches, and this is not just some flash in the pan studying, this is not just some phase that we've gone through. This marks a time in our life that we are making an adult decision. This is our choice and what we wanted to do. And this is a time around every year I try to reflect on that initiation and what it meant to me and what it still to this day means to me, and the decision, the choice that I made to follow my path. So it's something that was a very memorable time for me, as it will be for any of you who choose to initiate at this time. Okay, some of the things that people do at this time, especially in ancient traditions, in some traditions they would have big bonfires, big torch fires, and dance and celebrate the coming spring. In some traditions what they will do is just after sunset they will, or just before sunset, they'll darken their house. They'll just turn off all the lamps, and then after the sun goes down, they'll start to turn on the lights in their house, and that symbolizes the growing power of the sun. That symbolizes the sun growing into his power. And also around this time, this marks the rejuvenation of the goddess after having given birth to the sun god. And she is ready to burst forth with a newness, a new life, and into her maiden aspect. So there's a lot of things going on at this time, which is why we celebrate the Sabbath. So I think that is pretty much it at this time. So please stay tuned this week as we celebrate the many facets of Imbolc. And I will see you next week. Have a wonderful and blessed Imbolc. And thank you for watching. Many blessings. Bye-bye.